Hello, Stockholm. Today I'm going to talk about the question if China is this new Silicon Valley. So my name is tu-lam from Germany, and I research consumer, tech, and marketing trends all over the world. And I can tell you it's a pretty tough job, because then you have to travel to places like China and to Silicon Valley. You have to play video games. So I'm 37 years old, but I have to play video games in order to understand what young people are up to, Gen Y, Gen Z. You have to download all of the apps. And of course, for me, it's kind of an excuse to buy all of the gadgets there are out there just to play around with them. Because I think it's so important to really experience all of these new technologies instead of just reading about them in the newspaper. So I'm actually Vietnamese, but born in Germany. And I'm telling you this because obviously I look Asian, and today I'm talking about China, but I'm not actually Chinese. And this is important because I'm going to say a lot of good things about China. So you might think that I'm actually being sent from the Chinese government straight to Europe to spread the propaganda about how China is the greatest place on earth with all the progress, zero problems with democracy, zero problems with privacy and all of that. I'm not going to focus on this too much today because I'm really excited about some of the technologies that are coming out of China. So this is a picture of me at a Chinese night market, and there's this local specialty, and it's fried scorpio. But for me, the exciting thing was not actually the scorpio, but rather the fact that I was able to pay the scorpio with my phone, and I'm going to show you later some more examples of what's happening in China. I think all of us are thinking about the future, and we're trying to predict technologies. And in the past, it was pretty simple. You just hop on a plane to San Francisco once a year. You go there, meet some startups, and then you're pretty much set, and then you know what's going to happen in Europe in a couple of years. But recently, in the past 5 years, I would say, most of the exciting trends have actually come from China. And so when I went to China and had the comparison between Silicon Valley and China, it was really that Silicon Valley was kind of boring, and things that were happening in China were really blowing my mind. So who of you has been to Silicon Valley? Raise your arm. Okay. Who has been to China? Okay, well, actually more people have been to China, that's cool. I hope that at the end of the talk, even more people will be excited about China. And what I'm going to try to, in the next couple of minutes is to take you on a short trip through the tech landscape of China. I think we as marketers, as brands, as agencies, if we want to understand the future, we have to understand two sets of consumers. I think this Western consumer we know pretty well because we are actually them, we're using all of these apps. But I think even more important is to understand this consumer. And as you can see, there's zero overlap in terms of apps that they're using. It's a completely different ecosystem, and we'll have a look at some of those companies. So my talk will have 4 parts. One is the rise of China, where I will quickly explain how they could become so big so fast. The second one is to talk about the future of commerce. Then I'll talk about some trends in media. And finally, we will see where East meets West and where actually the Chinese trends are coming to the West slowly but surely. So some of you might be surprised at the question if China's the new Silicon Valley, because a lot of people in Germany, when they think about China, they still think about China like this. It's just a copycat country. All they can do is to steal our intellectual property. Maybe the best thing they can do are some really quality fake Louis Vuitton bags. But in the past couple of years, they've actually become world leaders in areas such as mobile commerce, delivery services, gaming, live streaming, and even artificial intelligence. And I think it's quite striking to see how fast this has developed when you look at Shanghai in 1990 and then Shanghai just 20 years later. It's really astounding how fast things have changed. When you look at the big digital companies in the West, there's also a counterpart pretty much. For every Western company, there's a Chinese company. And in the past, you would have said, hey, that's just a cheap copycat. And they can only survive because the Chinese government doesn't let the original company into the country. This may have been true in the past, but nowadays, like at least half of these companies on the right side are bigger than their US counterpart. Bigger, more sophisticated, more technologically advanced. Also, when we look at the current top 20 tech companies in the world, we only see 2 flags, the Chinese flag and the American flag, and 9 of those 20 companies are actually from China now. It wouldn't surprise me if in a couple of years the majority would be from China. Me being from Germany, the largest German tech company is called SAP, the software company, and it was founded somewhere in the 1970s. So Germany's greatest company is like 40 or 50 years old, and all of those Chinese companies are maybe just 5 or 10 years old. And this is good for China, but very unfortunate for Germany. Which companies do we need to know about? So in the West, we obviously have the big 4. And in China, we have the BAT and the TMD companies. The BAT are Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, roughly equivalent to Google, Amazon, and Facebook. And we also have really large companies like Toutiao, Meituan, and Didi, who are bigger even than companies like Airbnb or Uber. To give you an idea about the scale of e-commerce, for example, in China, these are some numbers from the Singles Day last year. It's the equivalent to Black Friday. So they made like 25 billion in sales just on Alibaba. 90% of that was on mobile. There were 800 million orders made, and they hit like 1 billion revenues in 2 minutes and 10 billion in 1 hour. Just think about what this means for logistics if you have to deliver 800 million orders within the next couple of days. So the question now is, why is China so successful? And there are different factors. The first one is that there's some crazy competition there. So Chinese companies, it's really cutthroat competition. There's this very famous author, Kai-Fu Lee. He says that Western entrepreneurs are like gentlemen and Chinese entrepreneurs are like gladiators. So basically, they don't know any rules, and it's really cutthroat competition, which is best illustrated by the example of Uber. And they tried to get into China, but there was already Chinese competitor Didi. And Uber is actually the company that has raised the most venture capital in the history of the Western world. And so they went to China, and they were willing to invest 1 billion. And then the Chinese competitor said, okay, so now everybody can use our services for free, and Uber can try to keep up with us. And then basically Chinese consumers would ride both of these services for free for quite a long time. And Uber was burning 2 or 3 billion. And then they announced, okay, we're going to raise an additional 4 billion to compete in China. And then the Chinese company said, okay, great, 4 billion. We're going to raise another 40 billion. And then at some point, Uber just said, okay, this doesn't make any sense. We have to retreat. We're giving up. We're selling our business to Didi. And this is just how the Chinese roll, because they just see this massive $100 billion market, and they're willing to burn tens of billions of dollars in the short term in order to secure the market in the long term. What is also quite interesting about China are the so-called clone wars. So even though I said they don't copy as much anymore, they still do a lot of copying. And if there's a new business model, you can count on 100 companies doing the same thing at the same time. And this is best illustrated by the example of Groupon. So Groupon, the deal company, you may remember a couple of years ago. And when this concept came up with daily deals, all of a sudden there were like 1,000 Groupon competitors. And they also basically offered the same services, and they were really willing to also go down in prices. And obviously, you can't have 1,000 companies that are going to survive. And at the end, there were only 2 companies that eventually merged into one, and this is a company called Meituan, and this is a company that is now worth more than 30 billion. It's quite interesting because this company is the result of a competition of really 1,000 players. And so you can imagine that at the end of this cutthroat competition, the company that is the last one standing really has excellent processes, is really good at marketing, has really deep pockets. And so the demands for a Chinese company to really exist in the long run are much harder than for Western or European companies, and so they have much better operations and efficiency. Meituan is a success case, but obviously there are also things that can go terribly wrong. For a long time, there was this big trend in bike sharing in China, and then again, there was kind of this clone war, so a lot of companies did this, and you can see on this picture that all of a sudden there were like 100 of different companies offering the same services. They all had their own distinct color, but they didn't really have a business model. So it ended up looking something like this, where you would have giant piles of bikes that nobody was using. And I think this is also kind of symptomatic for the Chinese market, that they're so aggressive and so pushing those new business models so hard. And sometimes it will obviously not be very successful. What's also quite interesting is that technology is part of the national strategy in China. And it's really a #1 priority. This is particularly striking because I'm from Germany, and I have the impression that in Germany, the government doesn't care about technology at all. I have the feeling that they don't understand it, they don't like it, they don't want to learn about it, they're not curious at all. A couple of months ago, we had this big announcement in Germany, and Angela Merkel said, hey, now we have understood that AI is going to be the next big thing. It's going to be so important, so we're going to make this huge $3 billion investment over the next 10 years or something like that. And then 3 billion, yeah, you don't really know if this is a big or a small number. But when you compare it to China, you have just the city of Shanghai that is going to invest 15 billion. So Germany as a country, 3 billion over like 5 or 10 years, and just the city of Shanghai is going to invest 15 billion. And this just shows you how much technology is at the core of the Chinese national strategy. and that there's such a big lack of understanding in countries like Germany. We can also see that China is now soon going to overtake the US, even in AI research. And when you look at the top universities in the world, especially for math and computer science, you can see that some of the Chinese companies are actually at the top in terms of publications. And one of the success factors is also that education is so important in China. So we have here this tiger mom. Who knows what a tiger mom is? Okay. Who is a tiger mom in here? No one? Okay, so the tiger mom are basically an example of Chinese moms who will make their kids study all the time. So in addition of having to go to school until 3 p.m., they still have to do another math tutorials, learn English, learn violin, learn piano, and all of that. And so these are the very famous tiger moms. The kids are actually learning to code at school, but I think this is actually a good thing. So in Germany, we're still discussing whether we need computers in school at all. And in China, they say, hey, this is so important. Everyone should have some understanding of coding. So they make it mandatory in some provinces to actually learn coding. And in China, they also, when it comes to work, they have this motto of 996. And by 996, they mean work 9 to 9, 6 days a week. So the 996 is kind of the 9 to 5 of what we have in the West. Personally, I love my work-life balance. I would not want to do the 996, but you can imagine if there's so many people over there, really, really smart, from the best universities, and willing to work 996. So it's obvious that they're making such fast progress. Even Silicon Valley has a reputation for being very, very hardworking. But when Chinese delegations come to Silicon Valley, they're always disappointed because they want to make meetings on Sundays and they're surprised that there's no one there to meet them. Or they want to make meetings at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and they're surprised that no one's going to meet them. And so they think that everybody in Silicon Valley is so lazy. And so to answer the question, if China is the new Silicon Valley, I would actually say it's like Silicon Valley on steroids, in the sense that they have understood all of the mechanics and all of the business models from Silicon Valley, but then kind of add their own Chinese sauce to it. And somehow in China, everything is bigger, it's faster and crazier, and we will look at some examples of that. So what's happening in commerce in China? I think the most important thing to understand that it's a mobile-only country. So whereas in the West, we're still debating whether we should optimize our website for mobile, whether our website should be mobile responsive, whether we need an app, there's not even this question in China because they've basically leapfrogged the whole desktop and laptop age and just went straight to mobile. And what's very characteristic about China are the so-called super apps. And there are three very important apps that you need to know about. One is WeChat, the other one is Alipay, and the other one is Meituan. And what these apps are doing is basically to combine the functionality of all these other apps that we need to install separately in the West. So when you use these apps, you can do communication, obviously, but you can also do payment, you can reserve a restaurant, you can order food, you can do dating, finance, so on and so forth. And now I will show you a quick example what a day with such a super app looks like. Okay, so these are the bikes that you can see. Everything in China works with QR codes. You just scan the code and just drive away. No need to install an additional app. If you go to the restaurant, there are no waiters. You basically just go to a table, scan the QR code, order everything on the mobile phone, pay on the phone, and then they will deliver it to your table. When you are running out of power for your phone, you can just borrow some power banks. You just scan the QR code, you get this item. When you're done with it, you just give it back. And since like all your credit information is already on your phone, there's no risk that you're going to steal this kind of thing. And this is the Chinese night market with the local specialties like tarantula or also Scorpio. And even on a night market like this, for really small amounts of money, you're able to pay with WeChat Pay. So it's quite funny how they've used this kind of low-tech technology like QR code and implemented it everywhere, and everyone is using it in China. And I think the most fascinating thing is that they've really managed to get rid of cash basically completely in just a couple of years. And the most fascinating thing is that everyone is using it. Because in Germany now we have Apple Pay, but no one is using it. And I think only people who will attend conferences like this would use Apple Pay. But in China, even very old people would use it because they're so used to using digital technologies and are really embracing it. Another trend from China is the so-called O2O, online to offline. And in the West, we're always concerned about whether e-commerce is going to kill retail, whether all stores will go bankrupt sooner or later because everything is transitioning to mobile and to digital. And in China, they've really found a nice formula to merge the two worlds. So again, this company, Meituan, in food delivery is really big, and you can basically get everything delivered in China. And around China, you will see those drivers pretty much everywhere. They also have a pretty cool approach to buying coffee. And here it says coffee mobile first. And by that, I mean that when they think about a new business model, they always think about it with the mobile phone in mind first. So mobile coffee, for them, it's not just about paying with the phone, but basically also ordering it. This means that you will order it with your phone, then walk to some of those pickup stations and just grab your coffee. Or even better, you order it and it will get delivered. And there's free delivery for every order over $5. So the minimum value is really, really cheap. And it will get to you on average within 15 minutes. And so the question is, how can they manage to have such fast delivery? And the answer is that their coffee stores are not really the big coffee stores like we know from Starbucks. They're not really meant for any kind of foot traffic, but they're more like basically coffee kitchens that would be spread around everywhere in the city, that would be in the basement of some office buildings. And so they have basically a delivery network that enables them to serve coffee really, really fast, really, really cheap. And now if we do the comparison with Starbucks, they have 3,600 stores in China, but it took them 20 years to build this kind of network. And actually, this new coffee chain, Luckin, will build 4,500 stores in only 2 years. So again, this is like a crazy speed, and they're kind of reinventing the coffee experience, where it's mobile first and digital first. And this is also a trend that we will see in the future called cloud kitchens, because if you were to build a restaurant today, you would not pay the rent in one of the highest rent areas in the city. The opposite thing would be true. You would actually go delivery only and have a commercial kitchen that could be anywhere, that could be in a location with really low rent, and you would basically do only delivery. And this trend of cloud kitchens is also very big in the US right now, where it will reinvent gastronomy, I think, and where more and more of our eating habits and restaurant habits will move to digital. Another China-specific trend is the so-called new retail. What you can see here is the Hema supermarket, and it's a supermarket concept introduced by Alibaba. Here are some short impressions of that. Basically, you go into the supermarket, you have fresh foods everywhere. You can decide whether you want to have the food prepared at the place or if you want to take it home. Every product has a barcode, and when you scan it, you will learn more information about the product, where it's coming from, whether it's really organic produce. You can obviously pay with your phone, but you can also get it delivered to your home within 30 minutes. So if you live within like a 3-kilometer radius of the supermarket, there's a guaranteed 30-minute delivery that you have there. And those supermarkets basically also work as delivery stations and as logistics centers. And now a lot of people are actually making sure that they live in the 3-mile radius of those supermarkets in order to get this kind of delivery. What they also have are restaurants where you order by phone. And actually, because this is Alibaba, they've introduced this kind of robot restaurant where basically they've taken the technology from their warehouses in order to have basically those little robots running around that will serve you the food. And so they're also automating here a lot. So very different shopping experience from the ones that we have in Europe. And I think what kind of takes this thing to the extreme is the way you do a car test drive in China. So you will basically go into the app, select a car that you want to test drive, then you will do a verification with face recognition, and then you just walk to the car dealer. There's no one there. You get verified with your Face ID, and then basically there's this big machine that will kind of give you the car, and then you can just drive it and use it as long as you want, because in the app there's your credit rating, there's your credit card, there's zero risk. You can use it as long as you want. If you damage it, you will have to pay, obviously, but I think this is like much more efficient than having to make an appointment with someone and having to listen to the car dealer for 20 minutes trying to sell you the car. So you can just try out the car at your own pace. So these were some of the commerce trends. Now let's look at media. The media sector in China is also quite particular. Let's talk about gaming and esports first. I think it's likely that pretty soon we're going to live in a world where esports will actually be bigger than soccer. And I think this is just because of user behavior of younger users. Even me, for example, so as I said, I'm 37 years old. I used to be like the biggest soccer fan I used to watch soccer all of the time, and today I don't really have the patience to watch a 90-minute game. My attention span is unfortunately way too short, and I don't want to waste 90 minutes watching a 0-0 draw, which is really a waste of time. And also I think young people who will grow up with video games will actually like computer games better. And as you know, esports is growing so big right now. They have those big competitions with 20,000 people in attendance, with millions watching around the world. And actually China's playing a really big role here, because some of the most popular titles in the world that look like they're being made from Western companies are actually either produced by Tencent or part owned by Tencent. So titles like Clash of Clans, which was actually made by a Finnish company, but then bought by Tencent, League of Legends, but even popular titles like Fortnite and PlayerUnknown's Battleground. The people who are competing in those tournaments, the esports stars, are like really huge stars over there, really, really popular, making lots of money, and it's very professional the way they're approaching it. It's a real job. And so they will live in those big fancy gamer houses. So the same way that maybe soccer players will go to the training center, they have the kind of their team house, and it's really complete, full with like personal trainers, with chefs who are going to cook a healthy meal. They wake up at 6. They wake up at 6 in the morning. They get a healthy breakfast, some workout. Then they will have some gaming sessions. Then they will have some coaches who are analyzing their strategies, and they're just trying to compete and try to get better and better. And now there's even people who can study esports. So this is now something that you can study. And the way it would work is, let's say there's like 1,000 people in here, and you all want to become the next esports superstar. Then after the first year, we would decide, okay, who of you actually has the talent? And maybe there's only 10% who has the talent to become an esports superstar. And those people would kind of advance to the second year and be trained to become a professional athlete. But the rest of you would still stay in the industry and become the esports business guys. So you would be responsible for accounting for esports, marketing for esports, event management for esports, taxation for esports. It's a really big industry, and it may sound weird to you, but then again, even today we have very specialized studies for, I don't know, tourism or event management. So why not for esports if it's such a big industry? In the West or in Germany, or maybe even in Sweden, people still think that esports is kind of weird. People understand, yeah, it's going to be big, but it's not really to be taken seriously. And in China, they think it's very important, and they will kind of build like an esports megacity for $3 billion. So it's exactly the same amount that Germany is going to invest in all of AI, and China is going to invest like $3 billion to build an esports city. In this city, they will basically have an ecosystem for esports, where a lot of the development companies will be there. There will be big arenas, there will be universities, but also hospitals to treat esports-specific injuries. And again, this kind of looks weird, but it makes sense when you think of esports as a big industry, because already we have some big industry capitals of the world. We have LA, we have Hollywood for movies, we have New York with the Wall Street, and so it might make sense to build the biggest esports hub in the world if this is going to be a multi-$100-billion industry. And now they're really looking ahead in the future, and they're quite pragmatic about it. They don't have any conceptions about whether esports is a good thing or a bad thing, whether we like it or not, whether it's serious or not. They just see, hey, it's a big thing, it's the future, and so we're going to build towards that and invest into this area. Let's talk about some of the content and video trends in China. So in Europe, when we think about video, we still think a lot about YouTube videos. So this means kind of long form and also horizontal video. And in China, everything is, again, mobile first. So there's a lot of short video being like under 30 seconds. When you look at the international download charts, you will see that TikTok is really one of the most popular apps. And TikTok is kind of the successor to Musical.ly, with very short videos, but not only music inspired, but now also with comedy, with sports. And people get really addicted to that, because there's also like an AI algorithm that will basically serve you the kinds of videos that you will be interested in. And on average, Chinese people will spend like 60 minutes a day just watching those TikTok videos. Since the videos are only like 10 or 20 seconds, this means that they're watching hundreds of videos every single day. Here are some examples how brands are using TikTok. So for instance, this is McDonald's in Malaysia. They're using TikTok in order to create some challenges where users can record their own videos and then submit it to McDonald's, and then they will select a winner. There's like this hashtag Big Mac TikTok, and then there are some video submissions like this one.
Two all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
So TikTok is not really built around users the way that Instagram is built in the West, but rather around these challenges. So whoever sees this hashtag will want to participate in this challenge and try to create the best video for that. And the next video you will see actually happened organically because somebody thought it would be fun to do something with Haribo gummy bears. And then there was this really big trend about a Haribo challenge.
Never mind, I'll find
So really silly video, just a couple of seconds, but actually even on Twitter it got like 25 million views. I think brands and creative agencies just have to be able to create those very short form videos, very creative, not horizontal but vertical, and only for mobile. What you also have in China is a tight integration between social and commerce. And so whenever you see some cool products on social media in China, you'll be able to buy it because you will have the possibility to basically link the product and then go straight to the checkout, something that has existed in China for years, but has only been introduced recently with Instagram checkout in the West. Another trend that is quite curious and has only existed in China until a couple of years is the so-called live streaming. And obviously there's live streaming in Facebook and on Instagram, but no one really uses it, if you ask me. And in China, you have different kinds of live streaming apps that are really big. Some are dedicated live streaming apps, but even companies like Taobao and Tmall, who are like the Amazons and eBays of China, they have an integration with live streaming channels. So this would be as if Amazon and eBay had content on their apps, which makes a lot of sense. But for some reason in the West, social and commerce are quite separated, and in China, they really merge. What you can see here is an example of what this kind of live streaming looks like. So you will have some influencers who will basically just showcase their products, talk about beauty products, about cosmetics, and then there's like thousands of people watching it and giving the hearts and reacting and chatting and all of that. So beauty and fashion is a really big category in live streaming, but there are also very curious ones, like for instance this mukbang trend, where people are just eating a lot of food. And people just watch those videos and watch it for like 30 minutes, how this guy eats this huge piece of pizza. Another kind of genre is this kind of study with me video. So this girl will just sit there and you watch her study. She will not say anything during the whole video. She will not even look at the camera. And this video will go on for like 2 hours. And actually the idea behind that is that people who cannot focus very well at home, they will watch this video to kind of simulate the experience of being in a library where they see other people being very hardworking, being very busy. And when you look at the comment section of this video, you will find people who are saying, thank you so much for helping me getting through the studies. Now, after 5 years, I finally finished my degree. I could have never done it without you. You were my inspiration and all of that. And so there's really this big trend of watching people do some stuff. Whether we like it or not, it seems to be a thing. The way that those live streamers make money is also super interesting because they actually get virtual gifts. So you don't really have to pay anything in order to watch their content. But if you like them, you can send them a small gift. Let's say a small flower. This would be like 1 cent. But if you really like them, you can send them the supercar, which is like $30. And so those live streamers, they basically stream every single day in order to get more money. And then the platforms and the live streamers, they share the revenue. And you would think that this must be a very niche behavior. But actually, the biggest live streamers, they can make up to $10 million a year just from those virtual gifts. And if you combine the revenue of all those live streaming platforms, it's already bigger than the movie industry in China, which is obviously a problem for the movie industry, because if people elect to spend their money for those live streamers, there's no more money left to be spent at the cinema. KOL is an acronym which stands for Key Opinion Leaders. It's pretty similar to influencers in the West, but they're actually even more relevant in China. And they, again, are much more commercial. So Chinese influencers, they connect social media and e-commerce really well. And this whole KOL industry in China is a 30 billion industry. There's, for instance, this guy, Mr. Bags. He's a guy talking about handbags. And he was able to sell like $200,000 worth of bags in just 10 minutes, just by promoting them. This next influencer is called Becky. And she was able to sell 100 cars in just 5 minutes. So each car is like $50,000, and she only sent out 3 posts. One, she was announcing that something exciting was coming up. The second post was, okay, this is my new car, the Becky edition with the special color. And then the third post was that the promotion was live, and then within 5 minutes, this limited edition was sold out. People bought this $50,000 car, and they were able to pay just through their phone with their Alipay or WeChat Pay. Live streamers also use live streaming in order to build their own brands. And it's really interesting because when we think about fast fashion in the West, we think about H&M and Zara, and so they will have like 10 collections every year or even more. But in China, it's even faster because they will not really go into production until they've kind of tested the products. And so they will do some kind of live streams where they will only show prototypes, ask the audience, ask the fans what kind of style they like, what kind of color they like, what kind of material they like. Then they will sell it. And then let's say they sell, I don't know, a couple of thousand. But because it's already in China, they will just send it to the factory. And a couple of days later, it will be produced and then sent to the customer. So this kind of production innovation cycle is a lot faster even than H&M and Zara. And it's kind of reminiscent to the kind of old school teleshopping that we had in the West for a long time, but now it's being reinvented with influencers and mobile live streaming. So these Chinese influencers, they have their own brands. Some of the largest brands on Taobao are actually influencer brands. And some of them are actually making like hundreds of millions already from their own brands. So where in the West, the influencers are still promoting other people's brands, in China, they're building their own brands because they're at the source of production. So to conclude, which of these trends are actually going to come to the West? So I call this section East meets West. As you know, Mark Zuckerberg, he's married to a Chinese woman. He also speaks Chinese. And as you know, Mark Zuckerberg also likes to copy stuff, like he stole all of the features from Snapchat. And so now he's also looking for inspiration in China. We talked about super apps. And then a couple of weeks ago, Mark Zuckerberg announced that messaging is going to be the future. So he's going to de-emphasize the newsfeed on Facebook and trying to turn Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp into the next WeChat. And so he wants to introduce commerce and also customer service, brand channels into WhatsApp. And so everybody in this room should really look out for WhatsApp to become kind of a super app in the future. We saw the integration of commerce and social. As we saw before, Instagram checkout was just introduced 2 weeks ago, where now you can buy straight from the app if the user registers with their credit card. So no more linking to an external web store, but buy straight from the app without any friction. So in my opinion, Mark Zuckerberg should be like an honorary Chinese because he also copies as much as the Chinese do, but now it's kind of the other way around. We saw mobile payment with WeChat, and now finally, at least in Germany, we only had Apple Pay for about a couple of months. I think in Sweden, you've had it for a much longer time. We have cashierless supermarkets in China. In the West, we have Amazon Go. The only difference is that there are only a couple of Amazon Go stores in the West or in the US, whereas they already have thousands of cashierless stores in China. We saw the bike sharing trend in China, not always successful. And now in the West, we have scooters standing around, also in the streets of Stockholm. We saw that Luckin Coffee is really successful with the coffee delivery. And now Starbucks is trying to emulate that. We saw trends like this O2O food delivery. In the West, we have Foodora. We saw robot restaurants. And now in San Francisco, you have this kind of burger robot restaurant, which is like totally automated and where basically you just order from the app and then the bun will come down to some kind of assembly line and then it will travel along the assembly line and then there will be some meat put on it and then some sauces and then some cheese and salad and so on. The strange trend of Asians eating a lot of food also coming to America now with videos like this. This guy always eats everything at Burger King, everything at McDonald's, everything at Taco Bell. Those videos get like 20 or 30 million views. We saw that gaming is such a big trend in China, and obviously Fortnite has exploded in the last year. We have streaming millionaires like this guy, and this guy Ninja was so successful on Twitch, also making over $1 million a month just by donations from his fans or people subscribing to his channel. And we saw super influencers, the KOLs, and in the West, we have Kylie Jenner, who has also become a billionaire, not only by promoting other people's products, but mainly by creating her own products with Kylie Cosmetics. So if you see all these examples, I think the question is actually whether it's not really the West who's kind of the copycat and is copying all of the trends from China. So to summarize, I think the main learnings from China is that you should have this mobile-only mindset. So really forget about all other screen sizes. Whatever you do, optimize the content and the features only for mobile. I think the age of the super app is going to come soon, but this may render your own website irrelevant. So maybe in the future, .coms, .ses, .des will be irrelevant because everybody's just using those super apps. O2O and new retail, I think, will invigorate offline commerce and merge the worlds of digital and brick and mortar. I think we'll soon live in a world where esports is bigger than football. I think everybody has to be able to create short video and live streaming, even though we are not very experienced with that format. We saw the fusion of social and commerce. So I think there will be real social commerce, starting with Instagram checkout. There will be a lot more KOL or influencer brands. So I think the next Nike, the next Zara, the next H&M may be created by some kind of influencer and not by a traditional brand. And when we look at the national level, I think it's really important for us in Europe to learn that tech should really be a national priority, that there should be really a lot more focus on education and AI, especially for young people, but also for old people, because when AI is coming, I think we also have to make sure that older people have the relevant skill sets for the future. Well, Work 996, I'm not sure about this one. Maybe some of you want to adopt it. I hope maybe we can do some of the other things in order to avoid doing the 996. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tu-lam Pham. I don't know about you guys, but I really, really, really want to go and visit China now. So cool. We do have time for one or two questions. Great. If anyone in the audience is feeling curious, we've got a roving microphone that can run around. So please raise your hand if you'd like to put something towards Tu-lam. Yes, we have a lady there, I think. Yes, please, speak.
Hi, I'm curious about how you think the social credit system will affect the market in China.
So for those who have not heard about it, there's a social credit system where basically everybody gets a score, not based on their credit behavior, but more on their social behavior. The interesting thing is if you talk to Chinese people, they're not too much worried about it, because I think the difference is that in China, they think more as a collective. So they think if something is on average good for society, they care less about individual privacy rights. It's kind of weird because us in the West, I think we would not accept such a system. We would think that it's really bad on so many different levels, but the Chinese, again, are quite pragmatic about it. But obviously this will affect commerce and everything in a really big way, because people with a bad credit score are not able to board a plane, are not able to travel everywhere they want, which is obviously a good thing if somebody is like, I don't know, like a known terrorist, but which is obviously a very bad thing if you're getting punished with a bad score because you don't repeat the propaganda all the time. So I think it's a very curious social experiment, and I don't have a strong opinion about it. I just think it's interesting that Chinese not seem to worry about it too much.
It's so fascinating. If anyone's seen Black Mirror on Netflix, it's like one of those episodes there.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that I think now even Black Mirror is just stealing stuff from China. That's already happening. So they don't really have to make anything up.
Yeah. Any more questions? Probably got time for one or two more before we head into the break. Raise your hands. No? I'd just like to put this to you. You mentioned quite a few things during your talk, and there's a lot of marketeers in this room. Is there one kind of tip that you think marketeers in Europe could take from China?
I think it kind of sounds cliche, but I think just everything is going to change. In the sense that whatever we perceive as normal entertainment today is not going to be there tomorrow. Because you may think it's really weird to watch other people eat or watch other people study stuff, but I think it's really weird to watch people play handball or watch people, I don't know, Formula One or stuff like that. I think it's really, really boring. And I think we just have to be very open-minded. We don't have to like everything, but I think we should be really curious about all these technologies. We should try to be 14-year-olds. We should try to think like Chinese people, like American people, be really curious, try out all of the different stuff, play really around with the different gadgets. Because I think at some point, we will no longer be able to really understand anything if we don't really play around with it. I mean, we all know the feeling if we have to do tech support for our parents, right? So they will sit in front of some app and they don't know how to do anything. And I think this could very well be us. Because, for instance, I used to play video games all the time when it was still 2D games. And now if I play 3D games, I'm like totally lost. And now you could say, hey, this is not irrelevant if you're not a gamer, but who says that maybe the next Microsoft Office or the next kind of productivity software is not going to be similar to the 3D game, and then all of us would basically stand there in front of the software, the same that maybe our 60 or 70-year-old parents are looking at an iPhone app right now. So I think we really have to be aware of the fact that we're like really, really pretty old, and that we have to be super open-minded about these new trends. And I think it's better to be more risk-taking than less, obviously, because now that we see all of these trends and we know they're going to happen in Europe in 2 or 3 years, so actually we have a lot of time to prepare for that. And there will be some companies who are going to embrace it now, who may be a little too early. Some companies will start doing it in maybe 1 or 1.5 years, so they will have just the right timing and gain some experience with that before it actually goes mainstream. And others, obviously, will wait for 5 years until it's like way too late. And so I think in Europe, we're in the comfortable position that we can just look at Silicon Valley, just look at China, and then really have enough time to prepare for this new world that's coming.
Fantastic insights. Please give it up for Tu-lam Pham.
Thank you.